Officially in April, the draft at the end of this month. I like the look. Good to see you, sir. And you know where I want to start here. The Niners trading with the Finns to move up to 3rd overall, and you think Mac Jones is their guy. Why is he their guy and not a Justin Fields?
It's a good question. And to be honest with you, when San Francisco moved up from 12 to 3, my first inclination was to put Trey Lance there, the North Dakota State quarterback, or Justin Fields, one of the two, because Kyle Shanahan has always had pocket passers, and it works within his system, and I understand it. But I was thinking maybe let's step outside the box and get a quarterback with mobility. I mean, they saw what Patrick Mahomes did to him in the second half of the Super Bowl. They saw with Matt Ryan not being able to avoid that sack late in the Super Bowl against New England and getting out of field goal position. So I thought maybe it would be one of these mobile quarterbacks in Lance or Fields. But I keep hearing from people in the league and then reporters that we have that are very close to people in the league that Mac Jones could be the pick. And if that's the case, it's only because of his accuracy and the fact that he picks things up so quickly. He started 17 games at Alabama, and I had the first game that he started this past season against Missouri. And Steve Sarkisian was saying, we just needed him to stay in the lane. We've got 3 offensive linemen that are going to get drafted, 2 wide receivers that are first-round picks in Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, and Najee Harris, who's going to be a first-round pick at running back. So he's just got to do what he has to do. Second game we had mid-season, he said, this guy's really picking things up. And then third game, he said, I've never installed more of an offense in a college quarterback than I have with Mac Jones this year. And that says a lot considering Steve Sarkisian's past. So I think that would be the reason why. And the only reason why I put Mac Jones at 3 is because of the intel. But I have Mac Jones as the 5th best quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields.
It's crazy, Todd, because I'm thinking about why you would trade up to 3 to take Mac Jones. That sounds like a reach, except I've heard him compared to Matt Ryan. And you have the Falcons passing on a quarterback. Is it your understanding that were Mac Jones there at 4, that they would have taken him as an understudy to Matt Ryan? Because otherwise, why wouldn't you just trade with a team lower down? The Bengals don't need a quarterback, right? Like, you would think Mac Jones would still be there and you wouldn't have to trade as much stuff to move up.
No, I struggled with pick 3 and pick 4 more than any of the 64 picks that I did in this 2-round mock. And the reason I struggled at 4 is Atlanta isn't planning on picking this high again in the future. So maybe now is the time to get the future at the quarterback position, even though you have Matt Ryan for the next year or maybe 2 years. But you've got a once-in-a-decade type prospect in Kyle Pitts, the Florida tight end, staring you in the face. And if you're going to try to win in the next 2 years, why don't you pair him up with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and have a dynamic pass attack? So that was kind of my thinking, and it's not based, quite honestly, on any specific intel in the league. But I think they're in a tough spot. Do you try to win now for the next couple of years, or do you try to get the quarterback of the future? And if it is the quarterback of the future, it could easily be Lance or Fields at that number 4 spot. And that puts Carolina in a tough position. Carolina, I think, is going to be the next team to trade up to go get a quarterback, but Atlanta's not going to do it. Not in their division. There's no way they're going to move back to 8 and say, all right, Carolina, go take the quarterback that's probably going to be better than our quarterback for the next 6, 7, 8 years. So I think it starts at 5 with Cincinnati in terms of teams that Carolina could move up from 8 to go get a quarterback.
Todd McShay, this is really directed at everybody covering college football and beyond. When is everyone going to make up their mind about Justin Fields and give us the goods? We started off months ago, he's the prohibitive number 2. Then after that, we said number 3. Then after that, we said 5. And then somebody came up with number 2 or 3. And then now we got Mac Jones, who was at the beginning perceived as being a mid to late round pick. Then he could fall in the top 10. Then he's in the top 5. Now you got him in the top 3. And then others are saying, no, he might go number 10 or 15. We hope that Bill Belichick moves up a couple of spots to get him. At some point in time, when it comes to Justin Fields, isn't it about what he is or isn't, and no one seems to be able to make up their mind about who he is?
Here's the narrative that you'll get from everyone in the league, or most people in the league. I would agree with almost all of it. He is probably the most physically gifted quarterback in this class. When you look at his height, his weight, his speed. He ran in the 4.4s in his pro day yesterday. His arm strength and his accuracy. He is a very accurate quarterback. The issue is when you go and study the tape on him, Northwestern threw a lot of things at him in terms of zone coverage and different looks, and he struggled. Indiana did the same, and he struggled. He struggled in the last game of the season as well. And then, most importantly, there was a team that did a research project, if you will, on studying all of his reads and what he went through this past year. Over 200 of his throws were to his primary receiver. Now, that's a good scheme and having really good weapons. So he's taken advantage of it. It's not necessarily a negative, but you don't see him progress that often from the first read to the second read to the third read. In fact, based off this team's research, it was only 7 times that he threw the ball compared to over 200 times to a second read. So that's what is concerning to NFL teams. And the other thing that I see on tape, quite honestly, he likes to see his receiver come open versus leading his receiver and anticipating throws down the field. So those are the two minor issues. But again, we're talking about 5 quarterbacks in the top 11, which would be record-setting for the NFL draft. And Fields is as talented as any of them, in my opinion. It's about getting in the right system and the right situation for him to have great success in the league. And I think all 5 of these quarterbacks, even though history tells us it won't be, but all 5 of these guys belong in the first half of the first round.
Wow. All 5 in the first half of the first round. Todd, let me ask you this. I'm looking at your mock draft right now, and I want to go non-quarterback. The first name you have here, Kyle Pitts, he's kind of skyrocketing up draft boards at this point. Why is he so hot at this moment?
Well, I mean, he's a 6'5 and a half, almost 250-pound frame. He's bulked up. He used to be about 225, then 235, and he keeps getting bigger. He ran in the 4.4s in the 40-yard dash. And you watch him on tape, it's not just about the speed. It's about his ability to separate. He gets off the press. He's agile. He's got a former basketball background, and he does a great job when the ball's up in the air in contested catch. I go back in the past 10 years. I haven't evaluated a tight end and given this high of a grade in the past decade, simply because of his ability to, I mean, you can move him in line if you want. He's not a great blocker, but he's willing. You can flex him out to the slot. You can put him out wide, and he creates mismatches versus corners, safeties, linebackers. You've got to either bracket him or double team him. And that's why, to me, he opens up everything else. And you saw it with Florida this year. I mean, they have Kadarius Toney, who's a really good player, first-round receiver. Kyle Trask at quarterback, who's a good player. But this is not an elite Florida offense. But because of Pitts, it was elite from a production standpoint. And that's why I think if it's not Atlanta at 4, it could very well be Cincinnati giving that another weapon to Joe Burrow at number 5 overall. So he's not going to last long, and I think he's very likely to be the first non-quarterback drafted in this year's class.
Todd, Zach Wilson, I watched much more Justin Fields than Zach Wilson, so I didn't get why everyone was, I guess it's confirmation bias. You watch a guy, you think he's really good. Why everyone was like, wait, why is Zach Wilson too? And in the last several weeks, I've watched a lot more Zach Wilson. Oh, my God. Yes, I get it. It's Trevor Lawrence and then Zach Wilson. And the Jets obviously believe that because they could have gotten a haul to trade back if they didn't believe it, right? So obviously they're going to take him second, and that seems to be the consensus. What has changed because the reporting that was coming out a couple weeks ago, the Jets don't know what they want to do, and to Zach Wilson is a lock at 2. What happened?
Well, first of all, it's my understanding that the Jets never got a phone call from the 49ers. The 49ers started at 3 and contacted teams 3 through 6. Basing off that information, I don't know that they had an opportunity to move back. And if you're the Jets and you're convinced that Sam Darnold could be the guy, do you still want to move back from 2 to 12, even though you're going to get more picks? I mean, they already have 4 picks in the first round the next 2 years and 9 picks in the first 3 rounds the next 2 years. So they're loaded up on picks. But I think more so today than I ever have before that the Jets are going to stick at 2 and take Zach Wilson. And, part of it is because Sam Darnold has been battered and bruised and he's gone through a lot there. And internally, they know more than I do about what Sam Darnold's mindset is. And maybe Sam needs to go somewhere else and get a clean slate.
But what is it about Zach Wilson,
and a
Todd?
fresh start.
because it was like Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, this one. Why is Zach Wilson so locked in as a I see why with my own eyes, but what's changed for football people in the last couple of weeks?
I don't think it's changed. I think it's been like this for the last couple of months. The only thing that's difficult is when you're watching Trevor Lawrence versus the ACC, when you're watching, Justin Fields versus the Big Ten, when you're watching Mac Jones versus the SEC, it's a little bit more apples to apples evaluation. Now, BYU wanted to play a bigger schedule. They couldn't because of COVID this past year. They wanted to play better competition. They couldn't. But he dominated it throughout the year. And you see his ability to extend. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Everyone's making that comparison. He's not Aaron Rodgers. Everyone's making that comparison as well. But he's got some of that ability to extend